In today's video, we are going to discuss uh, the Queen's Gambit accepted Gunsderg defense. This was a very fierce game played by chess master Anwar Qureshi against national master Muhammad Naseem. And let's see, go through some history about Queen's Gambit accepted. As per this statement, it is not considered proper a gambit because in this gambit, if black retains the pawn, his position gets very well. So at one part, in most of the cases, black returns back the pawn. Usually in gambits, you retain the pawn, but in Queen's Gambit, you gives back the pawn for the development of your pieces. We are going to have a quick look at that what is Gunsderg's defense. It starts with d4, d5, d4, d into c4, knight f3, and the move c5. From here, the territory of Gunsderg defense starts. We go back to our main game, which starts from Vienna Variation and then converted into Gunsderg defense. Let's start with the game. Chess master Anwar Qureshi opted for d4. National master Muhammad Naseem was playing black and he opted for d5. c4, d into c4, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, e6, and e4. See here, it is Queen's Gambit Vienna Variation, or you may say that this move e6 is considered to be the Vienna Variation. After the moves e4 and c5, this move, now this game is converted to Gunsderg defense. In Gunsderg defense, actually black's plan was to hit the center from the flanks, like he is doing here. If black has the opportunity for the development, then his plan is to move to bishop to e7, then castle, then queen to b6, knight to c6, bishop to d7, knight back to knight whether to a5 or whether to e7, and then bishop this on d7 to c6. This is the plan of the black actually, or he may develop, but there are very few cases I have seen while studying, while analyzing this game, that black opts for this move g6 and goes over here bishop g7. But in very few games I have seen this move, not too much. But the main lines, main concept, main plan behind the black's development of the pieces was that which I highlighted. Okay, this is the start of the Gunsderg's variation of Queen's Gambit accepted. Here, Anwar Qureshi opted for the move d5. Instead, he could have gone for the move, directly taken this pawn on c4, like we check it. Bishop into c4, pawn into pawn, and knight into c4. Then bishop to b4. Here, white castles and black castles. This game is an easy one, positional maneuvering and a lot of this stuff. The black knight will be coming here after black has moved the bishop to d7. Then he is controlling these squares e5 and d4. Whether the white would exchange it or not, it depends on it. In the long run, he may take this, or the main continuation over here is bishop to g5 and bishop to d7 and rook c1, h6 and bishop back. Whether there are two moves, whether he could go back over here, bishop to e3, or whether it go back here on h4. So this may have been the course of the game if Anwar Qureshi has taken the pawn on c4 instead of playing the move d5. Now there are actually the main different moves are over here. Like the main move which was played in the game was e into d5. Another continuation was knight into e4, and the third continuation was actually the b5. The game gets very complicated over here. The game gets actually very complicated. It depends on what type of actually you are. Sorry, I'm really very sorry. My actually power cable was disturbing me. I'm really sorry for the inconvenience. If you play the moves knight to e4 or b5, these two moves are makes the position very complicated and very aggressive, although this game is already played in very fierce and aggressive manner. So the main move was e into d5 and e5. Here there was two continuations. This was the main continuation, e5. The next continuation here was e into d5. But in this continuation, the problem is that there are 38 games in the database, in which 16% of the games are won by white and 34% of games are won by black. So, as Anwar Qureshi had prepared the line properly and he went out for the main line, and that was e5. And usually all the grandmasters says that you should opt for the main lines instead of the side lines. There was one grandmaster, I don't remember his name. Actually, his name was Russian and very tough one. And he said that we got very happy when weaker players against us play the sidelines. So always try to play the main lines. Here the main move was knight fd7. But the move played by Muhammad Naseem, national master, was the move d4. And this is a basically, I would say, a weaker move. The better continuation was knight fd7. After this, the game may continue like this: bishop to g5, threatening the queen, bishop e7, bishop into e7, queen into e7, knight into d5, queen goes back to d8, bishop into c4, and here black is actually pawn down, but he could go for the development easily. Here he can just go for the castle. He can place his bishop on, knight on b6, asking white to whether exchange it or go back. Then he will go for bishop d7, knight to f6. This game is still very unclear that black would have the chances of a draw. So we go back to our main position over here. In this move, after knight f to d7, which is the main move in this position. Sorry, knight f d7. There are 204 games in the database, Grandmaster games, and 2,500 plus rating Grandmasters database. Out of that, 41% games are won by white, 43% are basically draws, and 70% are wins by black. So here, Mohammad Naseem Saab opted for d4, bishop into c4, standard reply, and knight f d7, and this was the first mistake of the game. Here the main move which is played before in the past is knight g4, and the continuation would be queen b3 and queen d7, protecting the pawn on f7 and castles. In this position, 3 moves have been applied by black or tried by black in different instances. One was h3, second was one was h3 by white, second was knight d5. After the move, queen d7, h3, knight d5, and castle. And Anwar Qureshi have opted for the third choice, and that was the castle over here. There is only one game in the database which has been played between Slav Bo Jederholm. I think these are German names. I'm not spelling them right, but whatever I am spelling, you could understand that Bo Jederman versus Slav. Bo Jederman was chess master, and Ladislav Pravik was a FM. So knight c6, the standard response. Knight g5, hitting the pawn on f7, putting a lot of pressure over here. So how this happens when you play the opening wrong? When you are not prepared against an opening, and you does not make these standard moves and just go for the very sidelines, and this happens here. Pawn into c3, taking the knight over c3. Bishop into f7 check, king e7, b into c3. The game is over very sharp over here. Although white has given up the piece, but the attack will be very fierce over here. Rook will come here or here. Bishop will come here, or white will move the pawn from its way, or bishop will come here, taking this pawn over here. The game will become very fierce. For example, we come to this move that if h3 is played, then knight c6, h into g4, knight e5, threatening the bishop and threatening the knight over here. Queen b5, asking black to exchange the queens over here. Instead, knight into bishop, queen into c4, d into c3, and queen into c3, bishop e7. Now here, one uh, both both black and white have the equal pieces over here. But here black is better because he is going to castle. He is going to move his queen to e3, developing his bishop over here on e6, bringing his rook here. Yeah, I would say that both white and black have the chances, but these two isolated pawns are unprotected pawns of white are the problem for basically white. All the pawns side are basically completely protected over here. So we go back to our main position. If we check, I think we should check the move also knight d5 over here. And in this game, also the second move was knight c6 by the black, the standard move. Then bishop to d5, pinning the knight over here, and queen d8. This game was won by black. It was better, I think, in all of these cases. I will go with the move which was played in the game, and that was short castle over here. So we go with our game castle, knight c6, knight g5, d into c3, bishop into f7 check, king e7, and b into c3. I once again demonstrated that why the castle is better, because rook is coming to e1 and e1 immediately. White bishop is coming to a3, hitting the pawn on c5 or f4, and queen is protecting the square. e6 in the black strategy, and e6 might move at any time, and this rook will come into attack. Archer will join the attack at the later moments. So in the main game, the main move was to play knight f d7, which black missed actually. So after bishop into pawn c4, black played f d7, queen b3, and here black made the blunder. Queen a5 was the blunder actually. Here the better try, although the black position is worse, but the better try keep the fight alive was to play the move bishop to e7. After this, bishop into f7 check, king f8, knight e4, bringing knight of the harm's way and hitting the square d6 in the black's territory, or saying that I am going to move the knight over here, knight to g5, knight c6, bishop h5, going back to h5 and threatening the checkmate on f7. Knight c into e5, knight into e5, knight into e5, and castle. Here you could see that white is better over here, because these two rooks of black are stuck over here, and white is going to come over here, going to develop his bishop over here and go back knight here, move the pawn to f4, threatening the knight over here on e5. Queen is hitting the diagonal a2, g8, and rook is going to join the attack on c1 or on d1. And white's bishop movement is greater over here. He may come to directly here on f3 or on e2. So we go back to it. After bishop into f7, king to d8. If king moves to here, after the check in the game, bishop into f7 check, king d8, castle, d into c3, taking the knight, e6, and bishop d6 was played by Muhammad Naseem, national master. Here, after taking this, actually this is the obvious move. After the move e6, this was the obvious move. Here actually white has a winning advantage in this position. Here black should have tried to move this, queen to b4. After queen c2, pawn into pawn, bishop into pawn. Sorry, after queen c2, instead of queen c2, it was better to take the knight instead first. Then here, if black takes with the knight, it is a problem. Better to take with the bishop. So if he takes with the bishop, then queen c2, pawn into pawn, and bishop into b2. Now see how much white pieces are active. White rook is coming to e1, and black's rook is coming to d1. White's bishop is hitting this a1 h8 diagonal, and white's another bishop on f7 is controlling the squares on e8 and this e6, and knight is joining the fight with the move knight to e4, and queen is threatening this e3, and queen is threatening play the move e4. But I would say that black is out of defenses over here. The position is so bad for black. We come back to our main game, in which after e6, bishop d6 was played, and pawn into d7, and knight into d7, rook d1, hitting the bishop on d6, and king c7. Here, one of the better tries was to play the move queen b6, queen into c3, rook f8, queen into g7, after king to c7, knight c5. This is completely overwhelmed position for black. White is hitting this bishop on d6. Knight is trying to give the check over e6, and after rook sacrifice, she could come to over here. Black's rook is threatened. Knight is misplaced. Bishop on c8 is blocked, and on a8 blocked completely. Let's go back. I want to discuss a very good idea over here. Yeah, this was the position I want to discuss. The players, the weaker players, would immediately, what would they do? They would capture the queen over here. But see what the strong players think. They think that we are going to keep the pressure in the game and we are going to overwhelm our opponent with so much pressure that he threw the towel and he says that, okay, I can't afford this torture. I am fed up with it. So think of, always go for the best moves. You have seen a good move, go for the better one. If you can't uh, find the better one, then you should go with the good one. But standard is always look for the better moves. If you find the better move, then go for the best one. So we come back to our the game where bishop d6 was played, and after pawn into d7, knight into d7, rook d1, king to c7, rook into d6, king into d6, and this was the mistake, bringing the king to center. Although black has already lost the game, but king back to back to d8 was a better try over here. So here bishop check. There was a forced mate actually. I think in just 5 moves. Fastest mate. Actually, there was the fastest mate which chess master Anwar Qureshi missed, and that was the move queen into e6 check. After king c7, now bishop f4 check, knight e5, bishop into e5 check, king d8, rook d1 check. Now to avoid the checkmate, bishop have to move here on d7, bishop d7, and queen into d7 checkmate. But although it is also a the checkmate over here, after bishop f4 check, kings go back to uh, e7. Instead of here, he should have tried the move knight e5, vacating the square for the king. Then he could move to here or try to go over here. Or instead of playing the move knight to e5 here, he should have gone for the knight c6. But that have delivered immediate checkmate. Sorry, knight c6 is wrong. It is wrong, but it because it would deliver the immediate checkmate. I have just overflow with the variations over here, so I missed. I'm I sorry, I have given the wrong information. Knight c king to c6 is not the move, but taking the rook was a mistake. After this, bishop f4 check, king to e7, a obvious move it was, and queen to e6 check, king d8, and bishop to d6, and the mate is coming in just one move. You can't stop it. If you bring the rook over here, queen into rook is the mate. So we once again go back and look at the game for one time more. That is d4, d5, e4, d into c4, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, and e6 and e4. Basically, this is the Vienna variation. And if black does not place the move over here, c5, this would be considered the Vienna variation. But here, black plays the move c5, and now it is converted into Gunsderg variation of Queen's Gambit accepted. d5, Here, I would have gone with the move bishop into c4 here. Not going into too much complications. That was actually this is as per the taste of a player. So we go back to our memo d5, and here I told you that there are three moves for black: knight into e4, e into d5, and b5. We haven't checked the moves over here: knight into e4. If knight into e4, then the move is knight into e4, e into d5, and knight c3 going back, and bishop to e6. Here the black actually has given away the piece for his pawns. You may see that he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all of his pawns. He has given away the piece for 3 of the white pawns. In this variation, white has more wins than black, and there are also many draws. You should be very good with playing with pawns if you want to play this variation. Knight into e4 over here. If you look at this move b5, which is another variation, then knight into b5 and queen a5 check, knight goes back to c3, and knight into e4, bishop d2, knight into d2, queen into d2, and bishop e7. Here both parties, both white and black, have the chances. As black is going to castle over here, he might be develop his bishop over here or here, protecting this pawn, or he may take the pawn on this and develops his bishop to f5, and the knight would be developed over here on d7, and he will bring his rook to open file c. After the castle, black would try to bring his rook to the open file d8, and obviously black will take the pawn on c4. He will go for short castle over here, and he will move the rook whether to c1 or d1, and this rook to over e1. This is the plan for the white and black in this variation if he plays the move b5. So we go back to our little bit, and here e into d5 was played in the game, in the main game, which we are discussing, and e5. And here I told you that there are three moves. One is e5, and second one is e into d5. Let's have a little bit look at this move e into d5. Whatever if white plays e into d5, then what happens? The problem is that black has these two pawns over here, of which this pawn on c4 is going to fall after bishop takes it. So here black plays the move bishop d6, bishop into c4. The pawns of both parties are equal. White 6, and you may see that black also has 6 pawns. But the problem is that white is going to develop more faster than black, and the placement of this bishop of black is not very good. If you play the move where you will develop your knight to here, it will take time to develop this knight over here, because after you play the move bishop to f5, then you develop your knight to d7, and then you try to counter this, hold this square e5, It would take time because white is going to castle and bringing his rook to e1. He is going to play the move bishop g5 check, pinning the knight. Then he's going to play the move like d2 or queen c2. It depends, and he will bring the knight rook to d1. So due to this reason, black has more wins in the database rather than black. White has more wins in the database rather than black. So the main move was e5, then d4, and bishop into e4. Sorry, c4. Bishop into c4. There was one other thing. Uh, Black would have tried the move over here, won this knight e4. After this, I actually think that this move was better for black to continue the game. Instead of playing the move knight f to d7, here queen into d5, then knight into c3, queen into queen, king into queen, b into c3, and after this, bishop to e6, protecting this pawn. Here, black, white could play this move bishop e3 or bishop to e7, knight to g5, or black would play the move bishop to e7. Instead of this bishop e6, the better one is bishop to e7, giving away this pawn for the fast development. And I think black should have gone with always go with bishop e7. The queens are exchanged in this position, and both black and white are going to develop. And I think both have the chances. And this game is rather drawish one. I think as Naseem was playing with black, he should have gone for the drawn position instead of going for so aggressive one. But there may be a chance because it is a very I think this game was played in 1990s. I don't remember the date here actually, although Mr. Anwar Qureshi sent it to me. So we go back to our main move. After d4, bishop into c4, then knight f7, queen b3, and queen a5 was the blunder. And I told you that bishop e7 was the move over here. Queen a5, bishop into f7 check, and king to d8, castle, d into c3, e6, bishop d6, queen pawn into knight, and knight into pawn, rook threatening the bishop, king saving the bishop, changing the rook for bishop. Then this is the check instead of this. Here, the immediate check, made in 5. Mr. Margashi, which he was missed. So, okay. If you, this was the end of the video. If you like this video, kindly subscribe my channel and please hit the bell icon button. Thank you very much.